One of the things that artists struggle with the most when mixing greens is making them look natural, but also getting the value of the green correct and the saturation of the colour. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to mix some of these greens in the landscape, and I'm going to paint this view here and I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, so I'm in Dalefield this morning, which is right near Queenstown, and I'm going to paint that view over there. Got my easel set up and I'm painting on an Alla Prima Pochard box easel. I'm using Blue Ridge oil paints here. If you want to get some, I've put a link in the description box below, and the colours I'm using is titanium white, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, medium, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, cobalt teal and phthalo green. And I'm painting on an 8x10 linen panel that's made by Source Tech, and if you want to get some, I'll put a link in the description box below. So then, first things first, we're going to start sketching out the composition here. So I'm using burnt sienna and it's mixed with liquid original, and the liquid's going to speed up the drying time. So actually I should be able to take advantage of that in this painting, so that by the time I'm coming towards the end of it, some of the paint will have started to just dry a little bit and I can layer on some more paint on top. Now then, one of the things I'm going to do with this composition, if you look over there, I'm painting this part here, but I really like the mountains, so I'm going to move the mountains in the composition right here. So I'll put the mountains here. So as artists, we can do that. You don't have to copy absolutely everything direct. We can move things around. I'm going to capture some of the snow as well. Right, the first thing I'm going to do here, like I do with all of my paintings, is I'm going to start by painting the dark values and shadows first. So it values how light or dark your subject is. Now I'm starting off with a mix of yellow ochre, ultramarine blue and a bit of the burnt sienna that was there already. Now if you look at the scene over here, the light's mostly facing the landscape, but there's still some shadows there, so it's really important that we get those in, because it's just going to add more depth to the painting. So there's going to be shadows being cast by the tree itself here, and there's shadows within the trees. So the rules for shadows and values in the landscape is we'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. Then as landforms recede, the darks aren't as dark, the lights aren't as light. So this is how we're going to create the depth and distance in the painting. So I'm just painting in these tree shadows. So I've just added a little bit of titanium white into my mix. It's just going to make the shadows in the midground here just a little bit lighter, and that's going to help to push back the trees and the other elements in the landscape more into the distance. So the shadows when we get to the mountains here are going to be even lighter. Now then, there's some other trees on here that are in shadow as well, so we'll start marking those. I'm just having a little bit of shadow, and it's just going to aid with the realism of the scene altogether. But painting the darks first just makes painting everything afterwards much easier. Alright, next I'm going to paint the shadows in the mountains here. So there's a bit of cloud shadow in there which I want to capture. The weather's changing quite quickly with the clouds. So for this I've used a mix of ultramarine blue with some burnt sienna, which is going to desaturate the blue, then some titanium white to get the value that I want, and then a bit of alizarin crimson for a violet tint. When you're painting, it's important to try and keep your colours clean as well, so just don't mix too many colours together if you can help it. I mean, sometimes you need to, perhaps if you're mixing greens and things like that. But one of the things I'm doing as I'm painting is I'm using the biggest brushes that I can get away with. So these are number 5 bristle flat brushes. The way I'm painting here as well is the exact same way I paint in the studio. Now then, what I'm doing here is just painting some of the cloud that's over the mountain. And I'm using the same colours that I used for this shadow area here, but I've just added more titanium white into the mix. Okay, so I've got my dark values established, and this now provides a whole tonal framework for the painting. It's going to make it much easier to paint the areas in light. So darkest darks in the foreground, then the shadows are getting lighter, as you can see there. So the next thing I'm going to paint now is I'm going to start mixing the greens for these trees and the fields in the foreground, this hill here. So let's go to my paint palette here, and we're going to start off with some yellow ochre. I'm going to use some cadmium yellow medium and some ultramarine blue. This is going to form our main green mix here. I'll use a bit of burnt sienna as well to balance out the green. Burnt sienna contains red, which is opposite to green on the colour wheel. And then I'm going to mix in a little bit of cobalt teal. So that's just going to green it up a little bit. So we've got a mixed bag of colours here because a lot of the foliage in these trees is still green, but then we're getting yellows coming in there for autumn as the trees are starting to turn colour. We can also mix in a little bit of titanium white as well. So then let's make a start on our tree here. So we've got some nice golden tones in there. And then we've still got some rich greens. The burnt sienna from where I just sketched it out can mix in as well, so that's going to just add to it overall. Now when you're painting trees, you don't want to be painting every single leaf, so just think of it as a mass and just get the main lights and darks in there. So one of the things with green is it's one of those colours that a lot of artists have trouble with, and one of the things you can do is, in order to stop them from looking overly saturated or just artificial looking, like neon looking green, just mix a colour that contains red. So burnt sienna, for example, contains red. Red being its colour opposite, the colour opposite to green on the colour wheel. Later on in the painting I'll come back to this tree and then I'll restate the dark values and tidy up some of the shadows in here, and we can also add more highlight, but I just want to get its general shape in right now. So one of the things with green is it's a colour that doesn't travel well. The light wavelengths don't travel well over long distance, and they start to drop out quite quickly as they go into the distance. So the more we go into the distance, we want to be using less saturated greens. Right, so next I'm going to paint the grass. So let me just explain quickly about the main values in the landscape, so the lights and darks. So John Carlson, in his book Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting, summarised the landscape into 4 main areas, and he said that the arch of the sky is some of the lightest values in the landscape, and the ground planes of the grass is also quite light in value. Then the slanting planes of the mountains are getting darker in value, and then the upright planes, which are the trees, are some of the darkest values in the landscape. So I think this is just a really easy way to remember things. So in order to make our trees stand out in the landscape, the grass needs to be lighter than the trees. So I think that's pretty easy to remember, and it's just something you can just keep a check on as you're painting. So what I'm doing now, I'm painting this grass. There's also some straw coloured grass there, so I'm going to be kind of blending the twos, but I'm just going to show you a way that you can paint natural looking grass. So what I've done here is I've used my tree mix, and then I'm just thinking in terms of values, so how light or dark it is. So I'm mixing in some titanium white, there's a bit of yellow ochre, a bit of cadmium yellow medium, and then we'll get some cobalt teal, and I think we could mix in also just a little bit of cadmium red light as well, just to add a red element to it. So really the main thing is we just got to make sure that the greens are not overly saturated and lighter in value than compared with the tree. So what I'm doing now is I'm just marking in the main green areas, and then I'll mix in the straw coloured grasses after that. There's also the hills in the background, so this needs to be lighter in value as well. So I'm just going to add some more titanium white to the mix. And there's a mix of greens and straw coloured tones as well, so we'll mix that in. Again, we're just keeping an eye on the tonal values here, so I'm just painting in some of those greens, and then there's going to be straw coloured tones afterwards. So next, to paint the straw coloured tones in there, let's get some yellow ochre, and I think we'll do some burnt sienna here and titanium white, and we can use a bit of ultramarine blue to desaturate. We want a nice low chroma yellow here. We can even mix in a tiny bit of cadmium yellow. Yeah, I think we can definitely go lighter there. So I'm just adding more titanium white in the mix. You can just add a dash of cadmium yellow. And the cool thing about this colour is it mixes in quite nicely with the green as well, so we can mix some of it on the actual canvas itself. Right, next to paint the hills in the midground here, and we want some nice low chroma yellow. So chroma being another word for saturation, so I'm just going to get some more yellow ochre, we're going to get some alizarin crimson, and we'll use some ultramarine blue. And then I can also mix in some of the greens that are there already, so let's just see what that looks like. I've still just got to keep an eye on the value. Let's just see. It's not too bad. We want the hills to look like there's some grass on there, but there's some straw coloured grass as well, and it's dying back. Now at the moment I'm just getting the colour down, and then I can make changes to it after that, but we just want to get the canvas covered at this stage. Right, next I'm going to paint the tones in the sunlit side of the mountain, and it's just a really low chroma, kind of muddy yellowy colour, so we'll use a bit of yellow ochre, some alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue and titanium white, and we'll just see what we come up with there. And I have to keep in mind the value of the colour as well. Let's just see what that looks like to start with. Now actually I'm going to paint it a little bit darker to start with, and then I've got room to add some lighter tone to it in a bit. Okay, the painting's well underway, still a lot of work to do, but I'm going to start painting the snow on the mountains and in the clouds, and then I can add highlights. So we're going to get some titanium white, and we'll just use a bit of burnt sienna to start painting the snow on the mountains. Now one of the ways you can push snow back into the distance is to mix in a little bit of burnt sienna, and that just helps to make the snow recede into the distance. So now then I'm going to start painting the clouds here, the cloud highlights, just paint around the edges, and again I can tidy these up later on. But now then, next what I want to do is paint the blue of the sky, so we're going to get some titanium white and some ultramarine blue and a bit of cobalt teal. If you don't have cobalt teal, just use phthalo green, so that's just going to add a green element to the sky. You can also just mix a sky mix with titanium white and ultramarine blue. I think that works really well with mountain skies. You just need to keep in mind that ultramarine blue is a red blue, so it has a red undertone to it. So adding in the cobalt teal, or if you want to use phthalo green instead, that creates a greenish blue. So just painting in the sky here. Once I've painted the sky and the whole canvas is then covered, and I can see what I'm working with, and it will be a case of just adding some detail, adding some highlights, restating some dark values, and just making sure that the overall tonality of the painting works. Generally I save my lightest values until the end of the painting, so that's one of the things I'll be doing with this one. The other thing to be added to the mountain here is the snow that's in shadow, so I'm generally pretty much just using my cloud mix here. Okay, so the canvas is covered in paint, and now I'm going to start working in some detail, highlights, restate some dark values. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to work on this willow tree here. So I'm just adding some more layers of paint. One of the main things I'll be doing is restating the dark values as well, but I just want to get some more of the highlight in there. So one of the things I'm doing now is I'm just starting to paint the suggestion of a few lighter tones and highlights in the hills in the background here. Alright, so I want to start thinking about getting this painting finished, and the next thing I'm going to do now is just start restating these dark values in the trees, especially just to start giving them more depth and definition. So I'm using the green mix that I used to begin with, and I'm using a number 3 synthetic flat brush, so it's just going to get some more defined marks, and I can start getting in some suggestion of more detail. Start on the tree trunk there as well. Get some of the shadow at the base of this tree. Shadows are really important to creating realistic looking landscapes, and this one's a little bit more tricky because the light's almost shining straight on it, so there's less shadows, but even then just having a few shadows just makes all the difference. And now the next thing I'm going to do here is just add a little bit more highlight to the foliage And we'll just get a little bit of highlight in just some of these. Oh, I'm just going to add a bit more detail to some of these other trees. Now then, some of these branches are like a pale colour, so I'm going to paint some of those in there as well. And I'm using a synthetic rigger brush. So if you're enjoying this video so far, but you're struggling with your painting and you'd like to learn more about painting beautiful landscapes and being able to get the compositions, the tonal values correct, creating depth and distance in your painting, and most importantly, being able to mix those natural looking colours that you find in the landscape, then check out my art school. Every week I do a live painting class there. It's all about helping you to improve your paintings so that you can get that wow factor in your paintings, and so that you could sell them or just be able to have paintings that you're proud of that you can hang on your wall. So right now I'm giving away a 7-day free trial to my art school. Just click the link below to join. I'll see you there. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just adding a bit of detail to the mountain and just starting to get more of the suggestion of the rocky surface, the jagged edges of this mountain. Also just coming in with some lighter colour paint as well, so for some more highlight in the side of this mountain. Just some subtle highlights in there as well, just some lighter tone, just to give the mountain some more texture. So the synthetic brush here is getting some really quite defined edges here, so I can paint the cracked and exposed rocky surfaces of the mountains. So what I'm doing now, just adding some more shadow, restating the dark values, and then I'll add the snow highlights right at the end, so saving my lightest values till last. I'm just wanting to get the painting finished now. And now then, let's get some shadows in over this side as well. Right, next what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of detail here to the mountain, just some of these exposed rock faces. So close to having this painting finished now. Okay, so I'm just about to finish this painting, and one of the last things to do is to add the highlights. So saving your lightest values until the end, and that's in the snow. So what I've done is I've mixed up some titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre, and I'm just going to add a few highlights, just sparingly add some highlights here, and it's just going to really bring out the snow. And one of the things to do here is to just lightly brush the paint on top so that it doesn't mix in. Right, I think this is finished, and what I'm going to do now is turn it around to the light and see what it actually looks like. And there it is. So once you've turned it around to the light, you can kind of truly see all the tones in the scene and what it actually looks like. I really enjoyed painting this scene, and again, it's information gathering. I'll quite possibly do a studio painting of this, but I really enjoyed capturing the light and the different tones in there, the landscape that's turning colour as autumn's here. Really enjoyable. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.